All right, so we're talking about SOLIDWORKS 2016. Really what I have here is the presentation running time is about 4.5 hours at this point, so we should be getting out here about 10 o'clock. But then they locked me down to 45 minutes, so I'm like, whatever, so you guys lose. The path of our discovery. Let's talk a little bit about what we're going to see here. So I kind of wanted to hit the major things. There's a lot of new things in 2016, and I really can't just cover them in 45 minutes unless there's a button, there's another button, there's an option, you can do that. I didn't want to go through that. So what I did was I kind of hit some of the main things that we really do utilize in SOLIDWORKS. So we're talking about the user interface. We're talking about sketching. Some of the new stuff in parts, some of the new stuff in assemblies, and some of the new stuff in drawing. So, we'll kind of go through this thing here. As a show of hands, how many guys are utilizing 2016 at this point in time? Okay, how you like the user interface? Yeah?
Specifically the colors.
Yeah. So let's get into the user interface. Where's my colors? That's tell you what, I've gotten a lot of emails. They're like, "Oh, I can't work anymore because it's it's like, really, seriously, like they just changed the color guy." So the interface, some of the things that updated. One was the UI redesign. If you've gotten into it or if you've seen snapshots of it, you'll see it's a little bit grayer. If I go into SOLIDWORKS here and just start a new part, we can kind of see a little bit of what people have been talking about. They went to a new couple of different things. One of the biggest things that they did in the background, and one of the main reasons for the user interface changing, is 4K monitors and 8K coming soon, I can imagine. But the problem with the 4K monitors is that your buttons were really, really tiny, and so you couldn't see them. You could scale those buttons up, but then they didn't scale right. They kind of got misplaced. They started moving around, and really what it comes from is the fact that those used to be just like it was a raster image. That's all it was. So what they've done for future sakes, basically, for going to higher and higher resolutions, is to go through and make it more of a vector base. So now it's a lot more scalable. And if you kind of think about it, you can't take a little image and then blow it up to a poster size without getting that graininess. They got rid of the graininess. So that's going to be one of the big reasons why they changed it. And if I take a look here, so the icons are now scalable. Now, we also notice, if I flip back in there, is our icons have changed. No longer is the traditional yellow and green icons that were up there. Has been an amazing couple of months while people were trying to get through this and stuff, and that's really the big thing. Really what they were trying to do initially, color blindness. You're talking 1 in 4 males out there are colorblind. They can't see the differences. They were trying to get more in line with being a neutral color for people of any sight stuff. The other one, it's a little bit more in line with their products. If you've seen some of the stuff that we have out that SOLIDWORKS has been creating lately, you've got the mechanical conceptual, you've got the industrial conceptual as well too. They kind of have this bluish tint to it and all that good stuff, so it kind of was all homogeneous together. And then the other thing that they really want to do is they just want to really poke you guys. They want to infuriate the user base. So I think they did a good job. If you've used 2016, you're really not happy with the colors, and you've been stomping your feet a little bit, Service Pack 3 is supposed to give you your option to bring colors back to the icon. So if that's something that is really hurting you, you can change it back after Service Pack 3. So SOLIDWORKS did listen to you guys, and they did go through with it. The last thing we have here, or the next thing we have here, is what we call the triad. So I've never been super happy with the triad myself. In fact, if I open up something here, we'll take a look at it. One of the things that you would see this in is right here. If you're doing one of the direct editing, the moving of faces. Previous inside of SOLIDWORKS, you had these nice little rings. They were really skinny, these little arrows, and you had to click them just right. And if you didn't, you picked a surface. Super frustrating. These are a lot nicer. They're bigger. They're easier to click. And if I needed to, you can see that they highlight, real nicely. So I know that if I pick the button and actually move it, it's actually going to work out for me really well. So anywhere that you use the triad, this is going to be here with the move face, but if you guys are doing explosions with your assemblies, explosions were always that way. You'd click on something and it just, you get mad, you hit your keyboard, you escape out, do whatever you needed to. So triad, I'm kind of real happy with this. This is really nice, big, bold graphics, can't miss it, easy to use. All right, so last thing we have on here is the breadcrumbs. New to 2016, we have a new avenue of information that we've never really had before. I have to say, I'm going to raise my hand. I'm a longtime user, so I'm one of those guys that when SOLIDWORKS does a major change, I'm like, who needs that? And I use it for a little bit, and I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. And then I have to tell you guys, it's awesome. You got to just use it. So the breadcrumbs are basically the ability to kind of track down information in your model. So if I were to come in here, let's get out of this here real quick. I'm going to load up an assembly here real quick and kind of show you how it works out. So the breadcrumbs allow you to get to information a little bit quicker. You got a large assembly and you have to edit a sketch or you have to modify a feature. You either have to go blowing through all the feature manager here, and this isn't a real big assembly. What if you've got thousands of parts and you've got hundreds of sub-assemblies, and all the sub-assemblies have hundreds of parts or sub-assemblies within subs? And so to find that information, you're clicking through data, you're clicking down. Or the other one is you can click it on the screen and then your feature manager expands everything out. And then it's like, well, great. Now you've got this feature manager that's 6 miles long. You're scrolling. All right, so the nice thing that we have here is the ability to kind of get directly to the information as a visual type aid here. So what I'll do is come in and I'm going to hide all these out real quick. And I'm going to get to this particular flange right here. This part is in a subassembly, in the main assembly, and when I click on it, you'll see the breadcrumbs appear up here. All right. So what it does is it allows you to either get to the sketch, get to the face, get to the feature of it, or get to the body, or get to the part, or go to the subassembly, or just figure out where it's at the main assembly. So instead of having to go through your feature manager and digging in and searching and scrolling and looking for things, now you have this nice little path that takes you exactly right to it. So if anything, just like I have on here, this is so you can find your way home from the witch's house. And this is circa 1812 when they wrote Hansel and Gretel. So we'll kind of leave that in there. Sketching. Sweet. Midpoint selection, right? Awesome. So happy about that. And then you use it for about 10 seconds, and you're like, well, I don't want the midpoint. So how many of you guys have run into this? It's on 26. Okay, so I'm not speaking out of hand. Okay. After 20 years of using the software, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, we'll get into that. Don't worry. So everything's great. Everything's fine. Move along. All right. So midpoint selection. Very, very nice. No more right-clicking. If you guys ever have done that, you right-click on a line, select midpoint, and then you do something else. And it's always been, in fact, I've never used it. Like, people ask me, and I'm like, we don't have that. As a trainer, as a support technician, I'm just like, don't do that. It's just weird. You got to right-click. But now you can pick it. It works good. And then you use it for a little bit, and then you're like, what the bleep? It's not even what I wanted to pick. And you're going to see it here when we get to dimensions, that it can kind of bite you in the butt a little bit. If anything, I would vote to have this as an option, like turn on the midpoint selection. If I want to use it, I can. If I don't, turn it off. So getting in here, get into a little bit about sketching here. So I got a couple of sketch items here. The nice thing is I don't have to look for it anymore. I don't have to right click. I can point right to it. You can even come in so far as to pre-select, and this is one of my other points, and then come over to the dimension tool, and it's going to automatically dimension to that midpoint. So it's kind of nice. Downside is you really start clicking away, and I will tell you now, little lines will infuriate you, only because you've got an endpoint, a midpoint, and another endpoint real close to each other. So use that little slow movement, jerky movement to figure out which point you're on, zoom in a little bit, anything to help you out. So those of you guys that are not in 2016, just give you that heads up. Things are a little bit different. So I like it, I hate it. So, all right. Other things that we have here is going to be the segment tool. I really, really like this. I'm one of those guys that if I needed equidistant lines or spacing, I'd go in, draw 40 lines, pick them all, make them equal, everything blows up, you rearrange it, hit it equal again, then it ends up working out okay for you. SOLIDWORKS has given us a different way to utilize this. So if I take a look at it, we'll show the two different cases that we have here. It is a new function, so it's either going to be in your sketch tools or bring it out onto your toolbar like I have here. So for you guys, it's not naturally going to be there. You will have to look for it. So if I get into it, the first thing I want to do is I can do the segment parameters. What do I want to segment? I'm going to go ahead and pick that. You'll get a preview of it as well too. Here you'll see that it's in 5 pieces, 4 pieces, whatever pieces, however many pieces you need. And then you have 2 main options here. One is sketch points and one is sketch segments. So I'm going to do the sketch segments Say OK to that, and you'll see here that basically it's all equal relationships. If I had my relationships on, you'd see that all those arcs are equal to each other. They're all still connected to each other. This works really, really well if you guys are doing any kind of lofting and you're going from one shape to another shape and you don't have enough points in there or lines. This works really good for that. So keep that in mind. It's got some really nice uses for it. The other way that you can use that is going to be this way. Under segment, I'm going to go ahead and pick the line. You can utilize sketch points in there. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll knock this down to whatever number. We're going to say 5. I say OK to it, and then as soon as I say OK, I realize that I needed 4, not 5. I was counting the points, not the segments. Ah, dang it. So I'm a little messed up right now. So the sad part is that, well, let's check it out. If I get into it and I right-click on it, oh, where'd we put it? There we go. If you right-click on it, one more time, Ryan. You can do it. You got to right-click on the relationship. I apologize. Down here, you'll see the edit sketch or segment points. When you click on it, it will give you the options. It's almost like a feature inside of a sketch, similar to our pattern tool as well too. So if you need to adjust it, you can go ahead and adjust that as well too. The one thing I would tell you guys walking away from here, if you split the entities, you do not have this capability. It's only with the points. All right. So keep that in mind for future usage. All right, offset reverse. I've done this plenty of times. In fact, one of the things that I do as a trainer, I tell people walk through offsets and sketches very carefully because that little arrow pops up and it could point away, and then when you do it and you screw it up, it's an immediate undo and you redo it. You could be selecting a lot of lines or whatever's going on. Nowadays, if you need to, if I were to come over here and do an offset on this, I can go ahead, offset it the incorrect way. That's not the way I wanted it. I picked on the wrong side. Previously, we'd have to go and undo everything here. So if I go ahead and pick on the dimension now, what you have the ability is if you pick on the offset dimension itself, you do have a flip direction on there. So you can flip that offset pretty easily now. So that's one of those things. I've picked a lot of sketch lines, did an offset, said okay, and went, undo, pick all the sketch lines. It's just, so I like this. I think it's really nice. I think it's super useful at this point. Last thing we have here, pre-select for dimensions. Escape, smart button, reselect geometry. This is what I end up going through quite a few times, especially since I got into 2016. Really what it comes down to is if you go ahead and pre-select your geometry, whether you window select, control select, whatever it is, you hit the smart dimension tool and you will automatically get dimensions there. I will say the only drawback that I want you guys to keep an eye on is if you draw a line and then you hit the dimension tool, you're automatically going to be working on it sometimes. Or if you pick the endpoint or if you have something selected. So there's been a lot of times where I'm like, all of a sudden there's a dimension on the screen. I'm like, oh my God, that's not even what I wanted to dimension. So escape, get back into the smart dimension tool. So once again, I think once I get used to it, I think it's going to be a great tool because I'll get used to that. Helping me is really what it comes down to. So parts, threads. Have you guys heard about this? Does anybody work with threaded geometry? No? Bolts? Holes with threads? Yeah, don't do it for those. That's all I'm going to say. So let's get into parts a little bit. First thing we'll hit here is sheet metal tools. So one of the new changes in sheet metal, it's kind of small. It's actually like I almost skipped over it and not thinking about it. But now I come to think about it, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute, I've run into this quite a few times. So the nice thing about the new sheet metal functionality is if I get into it, say I've got a piece of sheet metal here. I need to throw in an edge flange. And if I come to the edge flange and throw it on, we've always had the ability to go in and hit the edit flange profile. We could redraw the shape. We could make it smaller. We could position it, do whatever we needed to. One of the few things that we had the capability of, though, was being able to take that and expand it beyond its edges. So it's kind of a small thing, but this is actually a pretty big thing because usually what happens is if you had to get a bigger flange, you had to make a small flange, then you had to add tabs to the end, a couple of sketches, a couple of features. Now we don't have to do that stuff. So I think this is actually one of those small little things that's actually really huge because basically we've always had to work around the limitation before. In fact, it was one of those things when I saw it, I actually had to go back into 2015 because I'm like, you can do that, and I'm like, wow, it actually fails out. It doesn't even work. So keep that in mind. It's something one of the tools that we've added in to make life a little bit easier. And if you work with sheet metal, these might be conditions that you may have to get into. So keep that in mind. Rods and tubes. I tried to explain a little bit here down here. So if you've done a sweep and you're trying to make a tube, or you're trying to make a rod, or you're trying to bend a rod, or whatever it is, your steps were, after you had a path, to create a plane, add a sketch, draw a circle, add a pierce relationship, exit the sketch, select the sweep tool, then go back, and then you got to select the circle and the path. There was all these steps involved with it, and you're like, all I want to do is just draw a circle on the end of the line. So SOLIDWORKS had given us this ability to do now. If I take a look at it, I've got kind of a wonky 3D sketch here in space. One of the main things that we'd want to do is we'd either want to use a plane that was at the end of it that would work out, or I'd have to go through and pick it and hit the plane and do this and make sure it's right, and then that's just an extra feature. I don't want to deal with these extra features. So the new functionality today allows me to come in and do just a sweep. Either it's a base, adding material, or you can do this removing by cutting the material. We come in, you can do the sketch profile, or you can do the circular profile. So right now we are limited to circular. I simply pick my path. I can come in and say I need a 12 millimeter. That's going to give me a bent, rod in this particular case. If I need a tube, I come into the thin feature, turn it on, give it whatever parameters I have, and basically you've got your tube that's going to work out really nice. So keep that in mind. I think this is a great tool. The amount of time that we waste on making circles and planes that are normal to a profile are just ridiculous. So I like it. I think it's a great tool. It's one of those little things that works really good. There's not a lot of choices, so you can't really mess it up. Weldments. One of the things that we hear quite often, especially with newer people getting into the software, is our weldments will calculate the length of the material being used, but sometimes you have the people that want to know, okay, well, how much of this do I have to use? So as a quick example of that, I've got a simple weldment here. It's all 2x2 tube. If I look over here under my cut list, I can see that I have two different lengths there, so I have two different items that are being called out. And if I dig into it and look at the properties of the cut list item here, what I'll see is I do have the overall length per item, but then down here, there is a new property called total length. So what it does is it says, hey, similar profiles in the weldment will actually just add up the whole total of what you need and put it there as a number. So here it says 1600. If I go to the secondary item that I have there, the shorter one, you'll still see it says 1600 down there, but you'll have the 350.8 up there for the total length on each piece there. So one of those small things once again, but now this is information I can leverage. I can throw it on a drawing. The guys that are purchasing are doing the orders. Now they know if they need 6 sticks or 1 stick or whatever it may be at that point. All right, so the last one we have here, thread. So you're wondering why your assembly is so slow, and this is basically going to be coming from the Desai Help Desk circa 2016. So basically what we have here is a new way to put threads in, and as a longtime user, as a longtime supporter of the software, one of the things that I often run into is people call up and they're like, wow, this is really slow, and it never fails. On the people that are really having a hard time, you look at it and you're like, you cut thread into your rods and you have it in your holes, and like, what are you doing with this? And at the time, previously, they would, a lot of times were just, it looks really cool. Like, my customer really likes it. Okay, well, you can't call me or anything on that point. But the thing that we have today is we do have the ability to add the threads in, and a lot of things that it comes down to is if you're going to mold something or you're going to cast something that has threads in it, you want the threads on that model. That kind of makes sense. But everything else I've never really understood until 3D printers came out and became more accessible. So a lot of times you don't want to have something get printed out, and then you're going to have to go back and try to put threads on it or something, or you print it out and you're like, oh, I used cosmetic threads, so now there's nothing. You got a cylinder, right? So I think it actually will work out, especially if you're getting into the 3D printing. You can get pieces and threads and all, holes with threads and anything that will work out a little bit nicer for you. So just to kind of show it to you, it is a little scary, but it's actually really cool because what they've done is they've gone through and figured out the taps and the die sets that are out there. I've heard rumors that this was kind of geared initially towards the bottling companies because that's something that they do want on their 3D models is that thread. But you can see here that it was pretty easy just to throw it into a hole and a rod as well too. Now, if I take a look at it, there's a lot of features in here. One of the main features that we have is you have to pick a circular edge and you kind of just work it through. And even on this one here, if I take a look at it, you can see that I picked a circular edge that was on a chamfer as well too. So it's pretty robust. Like it doesn't have to be very simple geometry or anything like that. You have total lengths going on down here. Also, you have your specification as well too. So, are you doing a bottle? So, if you guys happen to be doing bottles, maybe Fog Filler needs to look into this as well too. A lot of the thread shapes that they use in the bottling company or on the bottling side of things are actually probably already there for them, so they might not have to do any of the handmade sweeps anymore. You will see that I have the inch die, the inch tap, so whether it's inside or outside, so if it's a die on the outside or a tap or a hole that you're tapping. Down here, you can say whether you're cutting the thread or adding the thread as material. So they've got lots of options. If this is something that you're going to get into, I'm going to say, like I tell everybody else, hit the help button. There's a lot of information. I won't lie, when I was kind of making this stuff and put it together, I'm like, I'm going to hit the help and kind of read into it, figure out what's going on. Had a couple messages come up, wasn't sure what that meant. Help actually helped out at that time. I understood what I had done. So definitely if you're going to use it, take a couple minutes, read through the help file. It's well worth your 5 minutes going through it. All right, so assemblies. Ever try to animate a 6-axis robot? It's multiple degrees of freedom. This is one of those things that you get into and you try to drag apart, and then you get a part on the other side of your assembly starts flapping in the wind, and you're like, I don't even understand why that's doing that. So, copying multiple parts. This is a really cool functionality. I actually had a nice way of using virtual assemblies to grab a group of parts, turn it into a virtual assembly, copy it, dissolve it. All the mates came along with it. I was actually getting ready to write a blog article on it until I realized it had this functionality, which would have blown the blog article up. So the main thing we have here is the ability to copy data out. So let's get into the copy multiple parts. So I've got a small assembly here. I've got couple pieces that are coming in here. Oh, all right. So if I grab a piece, you can see that there is movement in here and all that good stuff. Now the thing is, this isn't a sub-assembly. It's not flexible. It's just a couple pieces that I snapped together, and I need some more of these. So previously, what I've had to do would be to copy the two pieces, made them back together, put the piece back on here. I'd go through this whole process, and that's something that I'm not really looking into doing. So in a case like this, what I can do is I can pick the two pieces, hold down my control key, and I'll just drag them both over here. The only thing that I found kind of odd and something that you want to keep an eye out for is you don't get a preview of all the pieces together. You only get a preview of whatever you're dragging. As soon as you let go and you drop it down, you'll see that the pieces are there. And as you can see, the mates are in place as well too. In fact, if I look down here, all it did was it took the two mates that I used to put those together, and then just added them up there. So that's kind of nice, especially in those situations where we do have the copy with mates. There's a lot of times that copy with mates just doesn't work. And there's certain situations you get into. This is a good alternative, and it's not limited to any certain number of parts as well too. If you got 30 or 40 parts, as long as you can grab them in a group and do the control drag drop, all the mates are going to be copied with it and everything else. Renaming components. So this has always been a long-standing thing inside of SOLIDWORKS. And it's not just SOLIDWORKS. It's any CAD system out there that references other files. So if you don't know what's going on, basically you take a file, you call it part number 5 because that's the 5th part you worked on today, and you drop it down. Later on, you pull a part number for it, you change the name of the part number, you open up the assembly. What happened to the part in the assembly? Well, we changed the reference. It's no longer called what it was called previously. So what SOLIDWORKS has done here is they've given us the ability to change the name of the part in the assembly itself. It'll change the name of the file, and it fixes all the references all at one time. So this is going to get rid of the whole searching and SOLIDWORKS Explorer and all that good stuff. Now, it doesn't work for moving, though. I will tell you that. You can't move the part. You can only do a rename on it. Now, it is pretty straightforward. It is very simple, but there's a really big secret behind it. So I'm going to go to my options up here, and I'm going to come here and search. I'm going to hit rename. And then down here, it says allow components files to be renamed from the feature manager. So this is under the feature manager setting, and you have to make sure that this is turned on. All right. If you don't, you're going to read the help, you're going to get frustrated, and it's like the last sentence they put in there, like, oh, and by the way, you have to do this, and it's like one of those little footnotes at the bottom. So be aware that there is an option that has to change. If you find that this is getting abused, you got people just switching names because they don't like the fact that you called it bracket and they want BRKT, just simply go into their computer and turn the option off, and they'll never be none the wiser. So once you turn that option on, basically works like renaming on anything else. You can do the slow double click on it. You can rename it. So I'm going to call it block. In fact, just to take a quick look at this, here's the part 9 right there that I'm utilizing. When I go ahead and click in here, we'll see it says block, and it still says part 9 there. Let's try this again. Oh, see? It worked earlier, I promise.
Hey, Ryan, if you were a PDM user, would you have to have that checked out to do that?
You would. That's actually a great question. So if you guys are dealing with any kind of PDM system, you would have to have control of that document at that time. So, or else it'll give you the issues. It's one of the things that I think we brought up to SOLIDWORKS, and they were kind of on the fence on whether they wanted to skinny it by or whatever. So just be real careful with that. It's not working like it did today. That's SOLIDWORKS. You guys have used it long enough, hopefully. So, so be aware that we do have the capability. It's really nice. It does help out. And just if you have a PDM system, make sure you're kind of paying a little bit of attention to that. Did you? It's like, oh my God, it actually did it. Yeah, I was like that earlier too. Unfortunately, I'm not like that right now. Make controller. This is a new functionality. If you've ever had to do any kind of animations of your machine running, or you have a robot arm, it is one of those things. I've had people come up to us and they're like, oh, I want to show this animation of an automated machine, and it's got a 6-axis robot, and I want to be able to do it. As soon as they said 6-axis, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, maybe. Like if you're just going to move it back and forth, great. But oh no, I got to move it and rotate it and do this, and I'm like, yeah, just maybe, I don't know. So, it eases the pain of multiple degrees of freedom is really what it does help in there. Seriously, 6-axis robot, they're actually a piece of cake now. With all the different relationships that we have on there, and angle relationships and limit mates and this and that, one of the things that we run into, especially with a robot, especially with a lot of degrees of freedom on any kind of mechanism, is you move one part and the part on the end of the arm flaps around in the breeze. And you're like, that's not what I want, but SOLIDWORKS already caught it as an animation, so this thing looks like it has a palsy as it's moving around. You got to redo things. It always just kind of stunk a little bit. This is probably one of my most favorite features. I've done a lot of animations through the years. I've learned how to quote unquote work with the system. Now it's like, wow, I don't have to work with I don't have to fight the system. It just works with it. So I'll go ahead and show it to you here. It is a little bit of a demo of what it can do, and it's not too awful bad here. So I'm going to just bring up an assembly. Oh, we don't want to do that. This is what Ryan gets for opening 15,000. What's that? Not too awful bad. I go, eat it. I grit my teeth. All right, so we're recording this too, so that should work out really good. All right, so we have an assembly here. It's got a couple degrees of freedom. You know, I can turn this back and forth. There's a mate down here that's controlling the height. So if I get in there, I got to double click on it. It's at 0 because those are the best dimensions ever, right? 0, which way is it going to go? But the main thing that we have here is I've just got all these different things that I can play with, all right? And I could animate this, but, I end up starting to fight things. Like, I need to pick the block up, I need to rotate it, I need to swing it through space, I need to put it in the hole. And you could do this, and if I were to show it to you through the animation tool, you're looking at 20 minutes of sitting back watching me mess around with it, hit the play, but that's not what I wanted. Move a key, go back, delete a key, copy key, do this, do that. We don't have to do that anymore. This is what I really like about this function here. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this, get it back to where it was, and we'll put it there. And it's going to be, once again, it's a new feature. So it is a new button. I did bring this out onto my toolbar just so I could see it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click it. And basically what you have to do is the first thing you do is in the box at the top is you simply put in the mates that you want to control. If you want to control all the mates, put them all in there. If there's like 6 main mates that you want to control, pick those. And you can pick them from your feature manager list just like we would pick anything else out. They also have a nice little button here that says collect all the mates that are usable. So if I click that, it's going to go through, parse through the geometry, all the mates, and go, okay, I can do something with this, I can do something with this. So something that's parallel isn't going to get put in there. Something that's coincident isn't going to get put in there. But angle mates, distant mates, even limit mates. And if you guys have ever done animations, limit mates are one of the ones that are that's a big no-no to have. Our animation tool does not play with limit mates very nicely. So this actually gets around that issue at that point. Now, the main thing that we have here is we're really going to be setting up the actions of the robotic arm or whatever you happen to be animating. So in a case like this, we have position 1. This is going to be its initial position. So what we'll do is we can come through, grab it, say I need to add a new position, call it whatever you want. Arm raising, da-da-da-da-da, position 2, it'll work out whatever for us. So this will be the first thing that we do. Now, you have all the different mates here. Whatever mates that are in this list up here are going to be listed down here. And basically what you have is you have the ability to come through and simply pick the tools, move them up, move them down. In this case, I need to go to 150, or you can type in a number. I need 151.5. Whatever it needs to be, you can just do whatever you need to. But you'll see that everything is updating on this fly over here. Now I'm going to go ahead and say that's my first position, or the second position. The next one I'm going to do is my third position here. And then what I want to do is I want to rotate the arm here, but I'm not going to sit here and hold this all day. So I'm just going to go ahead, highlight it, type in 90. That's going to rotate that 90 degrees. We're going to add a second or another position in. And now this one's a limit mate, so it actually has a nice little slider in here. I can just grab that slider and move it back and forth. It'll move it through its full range of motion capabilities here. So I can go ahead and throw that over there, and then go ahead and save that. And then once I'm all done, I also have the ability at the bottom to kind of play through it. So this is one of those things that you can scrub through it to make sure everything's working good. So we'll go ahead and tell SOLIDWORKS to calculate the animation. And what we'll see here is it'll run through the time. You'll see it lift it up. It's going to go ahead and turn it. The cool part is actually turning it while it's moving it, because we have these different frames that it's going in between. Once you get this all together, basically what you're doing is you're really creating that animation, those keys and stuff like that. So in the animation tool where it would flop around in the breeze and you'd have to lock something and then move something and lock something else, it kind of just works out real nicely here. So I would say out of all the new tools, this is probably my most favorite thing. For animations now, if you want an animation, I'm going to be all over it because I think it's going to be fun.
Is there a limit to how many things you can do?
Not that I know of. As long as it's controllable, you can put it in there. One of the things I didn't show you is that if you are changing something and you see another mate's kind of flopping in the breeze, you can actually tell it to stop. Like the limit mate itself is one of those things that it might kind of start to waver around as I'm moving another mate around. What you can do is you can actually click on it and then tell it to lock that position so it doesn't flop anymore. But as far as a limitation on numbers, I have not seen any documentation on it, and I haven't run into anything. But I haven't really taxed it at this point either. Drawings. Why aren't we using more MBD? Right? How many guys are familiar with the MBD stuff? Model-based definition? That's a subject you should guys talk about next time at the next user group. Alright, so let's get into it. Threaded hole callouts. I think we've all, if you guys have dealt with threaded holes in a plate or in a part, you bring in your drawing and all of a sudden you've got these weird notes hanging out on your drawing and they don't look good, and just they're kind of a pain in the butt. Smart dimensions can now be used on them. So we can actually dimension it as if it's a feature that I'm trying to put a dimension onto. It will actually read the thread geometry and it'll put a note in regarding it. So it's kind of like the whole call out, but it's using the dimension tool instead. So let me go ahead and bring that up. So simple plate, it's got a threaded hole in it. I wasn't going to go way far deep into this because really what we want to do is we want to look at this right here. So I got my little cosmetic thread in there. So if I come over to the annotations tool, hit the smart dimension tool, all I have to do is pick the actual cosmetic thread. SOLIDWORKS will go ahead and put that information in for me. So if I go back, right click, open the part up, and change that out. Make it an M10. Say OK to it, go back. We can see that the note has already updated for us. I will tell you that the only thing that I kind of ran across I was a little dismayed at is it doesn't do counts. So if I had 4 tapped holes in here, it doesn't do the 4 by like our whole call out does. So I think there's a little bit more work that needs to go into it, but if you got a tapped hole, I mean, nothing's going to stop you from coming in and typing in the 4x. And if you've taken my class, you'll know exactly why I don't want to do this, but we won't go into it. So you can do some things to it, but kind of a nice tool, and you're not left with that dirty note that SOLIDWORKS puts in that's kind of weird and doesn't work right, and you end up deleting anyway. Stack balloons, no more picking in a certain order. That's always been kind of a bane of the stack balloons. You got to pick things in a certain order. If you didn't, you kind of undid everything and then redid it. If things moved around or things got rearranged, all of a sudden your balloons didn't, show right. You get the dreaded question mark in the middle of it or something like that. It was always kind of a pain to get rid of it. So SOLIDWORKS has given us a little bit more tools to work with here. And so what I'll do is I'll bring up the assembly again as well too. And if you're not real happy with the order here, basically what you do is hold down your shift key, and then you can pick those notes and drag them, and even disconnect them as well too. So I know that I'm not real big fan of the stacked notes only because the little gyrations you had to always work with it. I think this is going to get me on the path of using those stacked balloons a lot more. The main thing there, make sure you hold your shift key down, and you can do whatever you need to with them. The nice thing is that it will actually move your it'll move your leader line to whatever the first balloon is on too. So it does kind of a really good job. I think that if anything, it might be nice unless that's not what you want. So pay attention to it if you do use that functionality. Stack balloons, sheet scale on the fly. It's like units, but it's more awesomer, right? So in our drawings and in our parts, we've always had the ability, well, actually as of 2014, we had the ability to come down here and change our units. No longer going to tools and options and click this and click there, and maybe that worked. But now in 2016, what we have is the ability to change the sheet scale on the fly as well too. So you can either do a sheet properties and type it in by hand, or you can use one of the presets here. So I'm at 2:1 right now. If I want to go to 5:1 and then connect that back up, yep, there we go. There you go. Okay. What is going on? I swear I did that. I ran through this whole thing, guys. And I'm like, holy crap, it worked. You have to make sure that it's using the sheet scale. All right. Yeah, thanks. I believed me too up until a couple minutes ago, so holy cow. All right, so it does work. I promise it did. It did not more than 4 hours ago when I was playing with it again, just making sure it did work. And no surprises here. Yeah, thanks, SOLIDWORKS. All right, last thing we have here is we've got the flag notes. This is something that I really enjoy as well too. It's one of those things that I come from the old days that when you had a note and there was a flag on the note or the number, you had to make you had to draw a shape or whatever, and then SOLIDWORKS was like, no, you can put symbols in here now. I'm like, oh, that's great. And then you'd have to have a balloon call out, and then you'd have to make sure that they worked right, that they were going together. So let's take a look at that. I got a quick note up here. I was using the number up here as well too, so I just turned on the number function so that I can type in a note. I don't have the weird spacing. And the main thing here is that all you have to do is select on the number itself. Once you get them in there, the number itself will show up, and you'll kind of see this new portion of the feature manager that appears specifically for the number. Now, you can go ahead and change it up and say, hey, look, I need to put a diamond on this one. You can change the spacing, update the padding, whatever you need to do to make it look correct. But the nice thing you have is right here, it's this checkbox. This is going to add it to what they call as a note bank. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. I'm going to see the note bank come down here, and you can see that item number 1 is in there. It kind of gives me some previews of what the note should say. And I'm going to do the same thing for this one. I'm going to grab it, and we'll do the 5-sided triangle. We'll add that to the note bank, and we can see them down here once again. Now, the nice part is that it's great to be able to do that, to add those graphics to it. It does its own spacing. It works out really nicely. But the issue that we have is that I put a note on, and I put it over here, and then I'm like, well, this should be number 1, and then I got to figure out what they use. So I look for a diamond, and then never fails. Someone comes through and is like, no, that shouldn't be a diamond. It should be a triangle. So you change it to a triangle in the note, but then you forget the leader line, and you forget the note at the bottom, and then it doesn't go, and some guy on the floor gets it, throws it on your desk, like, doesn't it turn red if you get it wrong? And yeah, whatever, guy. So what we do is we actually use a balloon for this. Traditionally, balloons are going to be used for our bill of material and stuff like that. So what I'll do here is I'm going to go to my balloon, and I am going to balloon this off, but by default, it's going to simply just be the balloon number from the BOM. So what I can do is when I pick on it, I can hit this little checkbox at the top of the list, the top of the properties, and it'll say, hey, it's a note bank one, and then I can connect it up to whatever note was up there, and you can see it's actually changing the graphics out. So in this particular case, note number 1 happens to line up with this is the base. I'm going to go ahead and add another balloon in here, and then we're going to just connect this up to the other item. And we'll go ahead and say it's number 2. And now if we make any changes over here, say I were to go, you know what, I want a looser fit on here, and I also need to change that to an inspection, we can go ahead and adjust that, and it's updating the balloon out here as well too, even if you renumber items or whatever you need to do there. So I think that's one of those nice little things that, you know, it's the drawings kind of are taken for granted sometimes because they're kind of the afterthought, and it's like, whatever, just get it together, and, you know, if we have problems, we'll get to it later. Unfortunately, that's what's presented to the rest of the world is our 2D drawing. So the fact that this is a little bit more cohesive, it works a little bit better, I can change one and the other one updates, means that I'm not going to be accidentally sending bad data out. So once again, it's SOLIDWORKS trying to make sure that it ties everything together so that it is a nice uniform experience and not a lot of updating and checking and stuff like that. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Any tips are appreciated, just monetary ones, not really presentation ones. So if there's any questions, I can answer them. If not, we can conclude our meeting, and I appreciate your guys' time.